All right, welcome to another episode of Okcoin Live. I'm your host, Samuel McCullough, and I'm joined this week by Alex. How you doing? Good to see you,
How
man.
you doing?
I'm great.
We just had this great conversation. We're gonna have to recreate all of it. We're gonna improv the improv here with Tor. I'm really excited about today's discussion. So we just
Yeah.
listed the Secret Network. We have Tor
Well, let's
from
cue it up.
the
So Tor's,
let's do it up.
Tor's, Tor's here with us today. He's the founder of the Secret Foundation, and former head of growth for Secret Labs. He's been working on Secret for as long as I can remember, as that I've known Tor. And if you guys didn't know, Secret came out of MIT. A bunch of really smart guys came out, and they've been building one of the coolest new projects and protocols for the entirety of Web3. So welcome, Tor.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I was telling Tor and Sam a few minutes before we started. This is one of my I feel like all listings are a little bit of my baby, but this one is special because of the uniqueness of the coin. So I just want to kind of dive into it, right? This is part of explaining what Secret is. Many people don't know. I actually was on a different show earlier today. We have a big fan of ours, Orlando. He runs a Big O show. It's a Miami show in Florida, obviously in Florida. Focuses on football a lot, football and crypto. It's a weird intersection. And he was talking about Cadena, and I was like, "Look, we listed Secret. You got to check it out." He's like, "Secret? What is it?" So, I mean, Tor, maybe tell us a little bit of what Aren't blockchains all a secret? They're all anonymous. So why is this any special?
Yeah, good way to segue into it. Like, what's the big secret about
What's
Secret?
what's funny?
Exactly. Well, it's funny because people have these assumptions about blockchains, especially if they're familiar with Bitcoin or Ethereum. They've heard of it. Maybe they've even bought some. And they have this impression that everything about the blockchain is a little bit anonymous or pseudonymous because it's not linked back to your your identity in the same way that your bank account is linked to you in the same way as anything else. But blockchains are actually by design extremely transparent, actually far more transparent than the existing financial system in that even though they're not linked directly to a single person's like state issued identity, especially if you've got a self-hosted wallet, like something you control, like a MetaMask or something like that on your computer, uh, even though that is something that's not linked in that way, if you were to look at the blockchain itself, there's a perfect public record of everything that's happening with every single account on the network and every single application or token that it's touching. And the legacy financial system has actually a good degree more privacy, or at least privacy in the way that not every user has the same level of access to access all of your information. Your bank knows something, your accountant knows something, the government knows something, but a stranger or your neighbor can't just gaze into your bank records without your consent. Whereas in the blockchain space, every blockchain up to this point has been public by default, meaning that every piece of information starts public and is public to all users and all observers. You don't even have to use the blockchain to see the information. You can just observe the blockchain and all your data is sitting right there. The thing is that for 99.99% of the things you'd actually want to build as an application, forget Web3 decentralized versus Web2 centralized, just any kind of application, you're going to require some degree of control over what's public and what's private to different parties. You want something to be known, like your address to your Uber driver, but you don't want that same thing to be known to literally anyone who's following the blockchain. And now anybody can come over to your house. It's the same reason you might want to share something privately on Facebook with one of your friends. But then when you find out that Facebook and Cambridge Analytica actually leaked this to a bunch of government operatives or people who are sort of anti-democracy, now it doesn't start to feel like a good, productive use of data. And you didn't explicitly consent to that. So there's this big link between privacy and consent that's not tangible to a lot of people until it starts to fail. And with blockchains, it failed from inception. We didn't really consent to all the ways in which data is going to be used and misused with blockchains when they all start public by default. So what Secret introduces is a private by default mechanism for Web3 applications, meaning all data starts encrypted in applications that are built on Secret. And if the application needs to know something, if another user needs to know something, there's a model for consent. The user can say, I consent for this data to be known by the application. We have a different system for this. We have a viewing key system, a query system. So without getting too technical, you just have to understand, if you understand anything about this, every other blockchain is public by default. Secret has a private by default model. And the reason for this is that that's the way data security and data privacy is supposed to work for applications. It's actually the way it works in Web 2. That's not the part of Web 2 we're trying to destroy. That's the part we're trying to preserve. The part we're trying to change with Web 3 is just empowerment, democratization of these technologies, accessibility for these technologies. And we're doing all of that with decentralized tech. But up until Secret, we weren't protecting privacy in the same way. We're proud to be one of the people working to change that.
Yeah, what I think is so cool about Secret is, you guys just aren't a flash in the pan. I mean, you've all been working on this project well, it started out as Enigma back in 2017, and it's kind of turned into the Secret Foundation and Secret Network and Secret Labs as well too, in its current form. So, the idea was there for a long, long time, and it's now it's in its kind of full state, and people are building applications and NFTs and DeFi all on this computationally private network, which is so cool to see. It's really the first of its kind, and it's incredible how you guys have been leveraging the development of zero knowledge proof technology to get where you are today. So I was wondering if you could maybe talk about what like zero knowledge proofs are, and specifically how they're used on the secret network to create this privacy that you're talking about.
Sure. I should point out though, so we'll get into why this is, but actually the main source of privacy on Secret is a different form of privacy technology than just zero knowledge proofs. Like ZK proofs are really great scaling technology also. So a lot of the times, if you're listening to this and you're not really familiar with privacy technologies, either on blockchains or not, there's a bunch of different kinds of things you might hear thrown around. Zero knowledge proofs is a big one. You might hear about zero knowledge rollups, very related. But there's also fully homomorphic encryption. There's also secure multi-party computation. There's also trusted hardware and like hardware-based privacy solutions that exist in addition to software-based privacy solutions. So a lot of what we focused on in the early stages for Secret Network, like to this point, has been the trusted hardware approach. And trust is kind of a weird word in the crypto space. Like people try to say we're building trustless technologies, and that's the underpinning of decentralization. But really what we're trying to do is create different points of trust in systems rather than saying you need to trust a centralized actor who's going to have access to all information, maybe, or that centralized actor is going to be what permits people to participate in a network. We're saying we're decentralizing that model, but we're not trying to eliminate all trust usually, because trust is the underpinning of every commercial system at some point in the stack, even if it's just the social layer, even just to say, I trust the person I'm about to transact with. You kind of want to keep those kinds of points of trust in systems because that's what allows you to build businesses, build marketplaces, build like sustainable systems on top of these more trustless systems. So we say instead like trust minimized systems. So the way Secret is doing it is we're using primarily hardware based privacy approaches because it gives us a few advantages over something like zero knowledge proofs. First, there's the cost advantage. Like zero knowledge proofs are very expensive. When I say expensive, I don't mean like you pay billions of dollars to use them. I mean like computationally expensive, like they cost a lot of gas on Ethereum or something like that. They're for most things that you'd be using them for, the cost of getting that level of privacy is not outweighed by the benefits.
Right.
Then
And
there's
then just
Go ahead.
to just to hop in, like it's important for our listeners to understand that computation is a very like you said, Tor, it's very expensive. Like if you look at some of the computational limits of what can be done on, say, Ethereum, it's not a lot. I mean, the gas, sorry, the block space is limited, and that's what leads to these high fees that people are paying to get transactions through. And there's definitely a throughput limit where at some point you just can't push too much data anymore. And one thing to know about the ZK proofs is that there's a lot of computation happening there. And most of it, if you're going to do it all in chain, it'd be extremely expensive. So you either are leaning towards one side where you're pushing towards more decentralization, more anybody can run a node, that sort of thing, or you have to go the other way and saying like, okay, we're only going to have 20 or 30 nodes that are providing this kind of high throughput, but that comes at the expense of centralization. So, but you guys are
Yep.
using the kind of the hardware model with the NPCs.
Yeah, so I'll continue explaining kind of why those choices have been made in the early stages, because it's exactly like you're saying. Everything is a trade-off. There is no perfect privacy, perfect security. Everything has a trade-off. There's no perfect computation. There's a cost to every transaction or computation you want to do. And there's a trade-off between decentralization, like very distributed systems, and very centralized systems. And usually those trade-offs involve things like performance and cost. So we considered what were the acceptable, and when I say we, I mean like the entire ecosystem, right? This is a very evolutionary ecosystem. It's not two people sit in a room and decide what secrets should look like. This is already, tens of thousands of users and dozens and hundreds of developers contributing to the secret ecosystem. And right now, the way that trust model, that trade-off looks is we use a hardware-based privacy system, which gets us, as I already said, the cost advantages. There's usability advantages. There's generalizability advantages. And what I mean by that is we are a generalizable smart contract platform that preserves privacy. So it's not like you can only build one type of application with a privacy guarantee. You can build all kinds of applications that are all composable, and that you get to use all these applications. They can all talk to each other, and you still get those privacy guarantees maintained, even as you move to interacting between applications on the network. Right?
Before we go forward with that, can you describe a bit more the differences between like transactional privacy and kind of address specific privacy, and then this kind of idea of full computational privacy, and like what's been done in the past? Because people are going to look towards stuff like Zcash or Monero or something and say, hey, that's private as well too. Like what's Secret doing that Monero isn't doing? Aren't they the same thing?
Yeah, definitely the place we should start then for people who are listening to this, because I have a very simple, I'll do it with my hands, right? Like a very simple technical diagram to show the evolution here. Everything in the crypto space starts with Bitcoin at the top, ultimately. Like that was the first and OG cryptocurrency, the one that pretty much, if you only know one, it's the only one you're going to know. And there's a reason for that. It was the inception of everything. So that was basically a distributed ledger of accounts to transfer value. And then there were two different evolutionary streams from Bitcoin. One was going this way with smart contracting. That was saying, okay, we've got value transfer. Let's make that programmable. How can we program it so that value transfers would happen if certain conditions in the network were met? And that is basically smart contracts, self-executing code. Or I think Vitalik was like, if we had to go over again, like we wouldn't even call them smart contracts. We'd say something like that, like self-executing code snippets or whatever. But I like smart contracts. It makes sense in my head. These are pieces of code that are smart enough to know how to execute themselves. And then on the other side were people who included Satoshi himself, by the way, who was saying like Bitcoin's not private enough. And that became the Moneros and the Zcashes of the world to say, there's actually this really important feature of good money that means it can be privacy preserving, because privacy preserving also means fungibility preserving. As soon as a Bitcoin has a past and a future, it is not perfectly fungible with really any other Bitcoin. You can always see where it came from, where it went. They're not one-to-one. They're not equal. You can treat them equally. But a lack of privacy is linked with a lack of fungibility. Also, a lot of people, including myself, consider the right to privacy like a fundamental human right that should be built into our monetary systems, especially if you're building something that could be integrated into absolutely every digital system. If it doesn't respect privacy, all you've done is create the world's biggest surveillance state. Even if it seems to be borderless, we've all opted into something that's probably far worse than anything we could achieve without this technology.
Yeah. So Bitcoin, you're saying, has this like has no transactional privacy. Like you can see all the UTXOs. So when
Yep.
let's say I was to send you 1 Bitcoin, there's a very clear path of that Bitcoin going from my wallet to your wallet, and everybody can see it. It's fully public. So, like,
Yes.
what's like the first step of moving away from that towards privacy?
The first step of moving towards privacy that was taken before, like, so what I'm describing, Monero, Zcash, they're doing this at the protocol level. They have protocol level guarantees for privacy
Mhm.
that they're trying to build in. Ethereum at the protocol level tried to introduce smart contracts. Bitcoin at the protocol level, for this very long time has not had privacy built in. So people were building things like, for example, coin mixers or wallets with built-in mixing functionality,
Mhm.
which is the equivalent of saying, let's take a big bucket. Everybody's going to put their Bitcoins in the bucket. And then when you need a Bitcoin, we're taking it out of the bucket. But because the bucket has everybody's Bitcoins in it, it's just a big mixing device for coins to get where they need to go. It was sort of inevitable.
So that's like I'm sending either you or Alex a Bitcoin, or let's just call this
Mhm.
maybe Monero or something. It goes into the bucket, and then there's 2 outputs which go to both of you, but I don't know, but the person looking at it would say, I don't know where that came from, right? So
Yeah, you're essentially breaking the chain of custody and provenance and
Mhm.
everything else. And when I say words like that, you start to realize, oh, this sounds like something that regulators would look at and be like, this is weird. Because, yeah, once you start thinking about transactional privacy just in that way, that's what made regulators really nervous, because they want to know that funds are coming from somewhere compliant, going somewhere compliant. And
Mhm.
once you start mixing everything together and using words like mixing, they really get the idea that you're doing something illicit, even if you just want to do something that's privacy preserving because you have a right to privacy. You get lumped in with that easy narrative of saying, well, clearly you're doing something criminal or illicit.
Yeah.
That's the issue that platforms. So I'm going back to my hand drawn diagram here, right? On this side of the evolutionary stream, things like Bitcoin, things like Monero and things like Zcash on this one side are all going to kind of start having those issues because they are protocols that are explicitly designed for transactional privacy. And those have this link, this history, similar to like how they're being treated like mixers, where it's like the entire reason to have this protocol exist, this cryptocurrency to exist, is to obfuscate the source and the destination of money. That's going to be an issue. Meanwhile, over here on the Ethereum side, you have the complete opposite of that issue, which is now you've created all of this new functionality. It's programmable money, even more so than Bitcoin was programmable money. At the protocol level, Ethereum is introducing this, but it's not introduced any native privacy. Meaning, if you go to Etherscan, you go to some Ethereum block explorer, you're going to see absolutely everything every wallet has ever done. That was not the intention here, right? Once we wanted to create in like an auditable financial system or smart contracts, world computer type platform, that was like not an intention where we said we need to make this public by default because it's for the good of the user. That was just as good as we could do with the technology at the time, but it's come with massive costs
Mhm.
and massive externalities, and the users bear those costs. And it's not a public good. It's just we didn't have the technology to make it better than that, to combine these evolutionary streams again and say we can have smart contracts and programmability, we can have privacy guarantees for users. These were living as two distinct evolutionary streams, each with serious issues. The issues over here being that they're not flexible enough platforms. They really just do transactional privacy, which will always put them under higher scrutiny, always limit what's possible to build on top of those protocols. And then over here to say, by having the public by default model as the base layer, there's only so much privacy you could ever create. Once something starts public, you can't re-encrypt it. It only works in one direction. Something that starts private by default, you can always choose to reveal. Something that starts public by default, you can't re-encrypt and then shove the cat back in the bag, shove the toothpaste back in the tube. Two different streams, two major issues. We tried to recombine those evolutionary streams because the problem we're solving for each side is exactly like the issue that we needed to solve by recombining them. The privacy problem over here, the flexibility problem over here, and coming back to what we believe is like truly something that can underpin Web3 applications and be sustainable.
So let me ask this question. You talked about trade-offs, and there are trade-offs in crypto. So what are the trade-offs for secret? And so maybe what I mean by that is, which use cases do you think are more likely to flow to secret versus not? And like, remember you talked about, hey, some blockchains are, or Sam touched upon this, 20 nodes, they're more centralized, have more throughput. We all kind
Yep.
of know what Sam was talking about here, which chain, but the point is they're super fast. Right. So
Yep.
let's go back and talk about use cases. What's going to come to secret, or what's the first thing that's naturally needs a lot of privacy, a lot of private computation, versus, what's okay sitting on an Avalanche or a Solana or something else.
Yeah. We're also asking a separate question too, which is what are the things that are going to come to Web3 and try to be out of Web2? Because usually a developer's mindset right now, the default is to still build this the centralized way. Whatever app you're thinking to build, you're still thinking, I should be building this on AWS. You're not thinking Avalanche versus Solana versus something else. So let's look at where Web3 applications have already gone. That's where the market has already said there's demand for these types of applications, these
Well,
application verticals.
by the way, too, but that might be because they're just not ready. So to with
Of
all
course.
due respect to all of us in this space, it's still very early. The chains are all still fairly, like, you can't compare a, you know, I don't know, like this is gonna be boring, but a SQL server, right? With
Hmm.
like an Avalanche. There's just one thing
Yeah,
has years and decades in the market, and is kind of
of
proven.
course.
So things will come, I think, to Web3 that aren't here now, just because it's not the first order DeFi, right? DeFi
Right.
Web3 makes a lot of sense. That's
Yep.
obvious, right? Even in some cases NFTs. So I
Yep.
agree with you, but I think if we think about 5 years out, there'll be a lot more on now than there is.
Well, can
Well,
I,
that's why it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if we could cover some, I actually have a couple of questions about like use cases that I personally have, right? So like if you look at say NFTs, right? If I wanted to
Mhm.
send Alex an NFT, or if I wanted to go put my NFT on Twitter, I'm definitely not doing that from a wallet that has any sort of money in it. I'm gonna fund it with money from an
Right.
exchange and a brand new wallet. I'll go out, buy an NFT, and then that can be my like public
Yeah.
Twitter.
You
Uh,
just used a centralized exchange as your mixer, essentially. Like
yeah,
you're trying to fund a new wallet through somebody who's going to obfuscate something about your identity. Like you're treating that as new coins, but that's not really the Web3 dream. That's just what we've kind of forced people into doing. We didn't give them another option.
yeah, and it's not like people come to my Facebook and they're like looking at my Facebook and can see how much money I have in my bank account. That's a really weird
Yeah,
idea. So like, does is Secret able to
it's
solve
backwards.
this? Is Secret able to solve this where I can like buy and have an NFT in my wallet, but people can see that I have that NFT there, but they can't see the rest of my funds in the wallet? Or
Yeah, this is precisely what Secret solves, and we're already solving it, right? We
that's cool.
already have. So let's fill in the timelines a little bit here. We've had private smart contracts live on mainnet for over a year and a half now. They launched in September of 2020. We're still the only network with privacy preserving smart contracts live on mainnet.
Mm.
So we have a thriving application ecosystem. We have dozens of applications that are already live that anybody can use, where you can go to Okcoin, you get your secret, you withdraw it, now you can use it on the network anywhere by interacting with it with the wallet, just like you would with MetaMask with Ethereum. There's wallets you can use to interact with Secret. Like this is all live. Everything that I'm going to be describing right now is not speculative. You can do it yourself. So my answer was going to be exactly what you're already bringing here, which is NFTs are a perfect example. Something where we've already demonstrated there's market demand. Multiple billion-dollar companies have been founded just serving the non-fungible token market. And yet non-fungible tokens are fundamentally just broken the way that they're currently implemented.
Mhm.
Because if you think about this, remember what I said before about the link between privacy and fungibility, and how without privacy, basically everything becomes non-fungible. There, you can always see the origin, you can always see the destination, like everything becomes different. When it comes to things in the Web3 space that are so tightly linked to our identity, like NFTs, whether it's a scarce one of one from an art collection or a PFP, but for those use cases that you keep seeing thought leaders tweet about for NFTs, like revolutionizing all online identity and reputation, the example that I use is like cookies in your browser. Cookies in your browser are not public to everyone. Your Google search history is not public to everyone. You've consented at some point to share those cookies. In fact, you get massive pop-ups, especially if you visit sites in Europe and those sites say, hey, you need to accept all these cookies. Are you sure you want to share these? And they let you click the drop down. There's all sorts of regulation around how you're supposed to be opting into the use of your data. Whereas in the Web3 world, we have currently solved this by just making absolutely all data public. So it's like, well, at least no one's getting any special privileges because everyone knows everything, which is the exact wrong way to solve a user privacy and user security problem. So if you try to represent your cookies, if you try to represent your online identity and history with NFTs, and you do that on any public by default blockchain, you've created something that is 1,000 times worse than the way Web 2 currently works. You're not waiting for your data to be leaked. You're actively leaking it yourself every time you do anything. And if we try to build use cases that are tightly linked to anything reputationally or identity-based for where we want to track people's online activity and allow them to gain access to other things or send information, passively, the public by default system is the absolute wrong way to solve it. Whereas an NFT on secret is private by default. Every token issued on the network, because a token is just a smart contract, every token on secret is a private by default token. Meaning you start with private ownership, you start with private metadata. You can also have public metadata and private metadata in the same NFT. So if you have an NFT sitting in your wallet and you don't want to reveal your ownership publicly, you don't have to, but you can still use that NFT to gain access to something because you're going to use that ownership of that NFT to sign a permit somewhere and gain access to some type of application. Now that application can read the information that's inside that NFT, that private metadata in your secret wallet. It can do that. And you did not have to reveal to absolutely every user, every application, either the ownership of your NFT or the contents of that NFT. It's actual ownership that feels like how real world ownership works. If something's in your house, you don't have to publish an online registry of everything that's in your house. You don't have to leave it on your front lawn. You get to have a house. You get to have private property. You get to invite your friends over when you want, but they can't just walk in, take your TV and leave. It's just, we've made a really backwards ownership model currently with the Web3 creator economy.
To be fair, I give all my friends TVs. I'm just saying, they can come in.
I look forward.
I think it's more like somebody comes into your
I'm sure
house and
mine's
just
in the
like
mail.
opens up your fridge and starts like eating your chips and salsa,
Yeah.
right? Like, hey man, like I just came over, thanks, like that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like the other analogy I've used, right? Because people are starting to get more familiar with these NFT use cases.
Yeah.
Is like regular public by default NFTs are like you go to the Louvre and somebody hands you a receipt for the Mona Lisa. And you're like, oh, so now I own the Mona Lisa, right? And this is my Mona Lisa ownership. And it's like, well, no, I mean, you have something that says you own the Mona Lisa, but anybody can go look at the Mona Lisa. Anybody can copy it and just like reuse it wherever they want. But you have a really nice receipt. It doesn't make sense to most artists that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of them. It doesn't make sense to even most investors that I would talk to, but they look at the NFT markets and they're like, well, clearly somebody thinks this is valuable. To me, it's just, it's kind of a foot that's waiting to drop. It's a mountain waiting to crumble when people realize that these public by default NFTs, not only do they not transfer a lot of ownership rights, they don't really give you any access control rights at all as the owner. The only thing you own is the right to move it because it's in your wallet. You can move it, you can sell it, whatever. But even then, everybody's going to know you did it. It doesn't really feel like real world ownership in digital form. Whereas with secret NFTs, because you can put the actual content of the NFT in private metadata that's only accessible by the owner, you can know that only you or the people that you've entrusted it to have access to the information in the NFT, which is like keeping the Mona Lisa in your house instead of on your front lawn. When that starts to feel more like how ownership is supposed to be represented, you get the idea that these are the sorts of things that are going to actually keep and hold and accrue value over time because they have native access control. They have native privacy. We don't think about native access control and privacy for physical goods because just the physical world, the way the physical world is constructed, we get it. It can't be in two places at once. It can be kept away from other people's eyes. In the digital world, we don't get that unless we build it. And we have to build it for digital ownership to be anything like real world ownership, where I think ownership is already working pretty well. Um, but in the digital world, we're still working a lot of stuff out. And I don't think that without privacy, we're going to work out any of it in a satisfactory way that's going to allow this to scale to $1 trillion industries.
And just a follow up here, help the audience understand. So let's say you have this Mona Lisa, it's privately owned, private by default. Can you
Mhm.
can you uncover it? Can you flex on others with your Mona Lisa? Because I know
Yeah.
I can't. That's one of the best things of having an NFT. Like I got my board ape right here. It is.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to hide it or flex it. Hide or flex. That's basically a new fight or flight of blockchain.
The nice thing is we don't make you choose, right? So imagine I'll go back to the board ape because it's kind of like the Mona Lisa of the NFT space, right? In some ways. Let's say you've got your board ape, right? And you want to flex on somebody. You can make your ownership public, or you could reveal it to whitelisted addresses. And for a set of addresses, say these addresses can see that I've got this ape. So you can flex your ape to all the other apes, let's say, anybody who's opted in to show off their apes publicly. And then now you can all look at each other's apes. But let's just say you want to flex on everyone because, board ape holders like to do that. So you reveal your ownership publicly. Now everybody can see you own it, but they can still only see the public metadata. So the public metadata could be the low resolution image of the ape, right? Or something watermarked, something showing that it's just the public version. But
Mhm.
because you can see which contract, like you can see who created the board ape, right? You can always see who instantiated a contract and deployed it. So you can say, oh, this is definitely the board ape collection. So people know that it's a board ape. They can see which board ape it represents. What they can't see is the full resolution image that only the owner would have access to. So as the owner, let's say you go and you want to display this in a physical gallery, you're the only person who can give rights to the gallery to access that private metadata and let them display your 8K ape. Anybody else who tried to show off the ape, they'd be flexing their crappy knockoff Gucci bag version of the board ape. And everybody knows, like when you're trying to flex on somebody and then you're flexing with something that's fake, that's gauche. You don't do that. So a secret NFT is a way to, yeah, if you like the flex use case, you can flex, but you're flexing in a way where it's like, you don't have to give up all the coolness, give up all your secrets for doing so. That's such a dumb thing to force somebody to have to do. And especially for people who now have these multi-million-dollar NFT collections, you better believe they care about their privacy. And I've talked to a lot of collectors as much as creators who see the value of this public-private metadata approach, this public-private ownership approach. And I do think, to take it back to the very first question, this is exactly where you're going to see a ton of adoption for Secret in the coming months, where we've already seen a ton of adoption. We have a number of live NFT and metaverse projects in our ecosystem. We had a NFT auction that we did with Quentin Tarantino. We have another announcement next week that is yet to be revealed on one of the next creators we'll be working with. So,
Sam and I love alpha
We love
drops on the
alpha.
show.
do you? I'll be killed if I drop this one, but just I would say stay tuned next week. Something's coming. Can I say that? Is that good
You can-
enough? I mean, timing is alpha.
yeah. Timing is true. Timing is alpha.
Pulling,
Okcoin live. Boom.
Well-
Timing alpha.
he's pulling like a Justin Sun, doing like an announcement of the announcement of the announcement.
Oh, I don't want to give Justin credit. Announcements of announcements have been around for years before His Excellency.
So I want to ask about something a little bit more deeper, and one of the issues that really has a much larger economic impact on public blockchains like Ethereum, and that's the dark forest, or MEV, or miner extractable value.
Mhm.
For people at home watching this, MEV is essentially the ability for anyone to see the data that's coming into the network. So when you actually make a transaction on Ethereum, you queue up your transaction, you confirm it, and then it gets broadcasted out to a bunch of nodes, and those nodes pull your data in, and then it gets queued up until it gets processed by the miners in a certain block. And at that point, it gets added to the block, and your data gets either used or it just gets added, right? So what that allows for is this period between when you submit the data and when it actually goes into uh, the blockchain as a block, and it's confirmed, where other people can see that data as well too, and they can make decisions based on that data. So just to give an example, the most common thing that you see is something called like a sandwich attack, where if you're using Uniswap or some other DEX, if your slippage is too high, people can essentially say, oh, well, he wants to buy Bitcoin up to this price, and the price is this right now. And we have like a 1% gap where we can push the price up and make him buy at a higher price. Well, they'll do that. They'll push the price up, you'll buy at that price, and then they immediately sell back in and they take that really quick arbitrage. Um, and this is like one of the biggest topics for research on the Ethereum blockchain, and also some of the other L1s and L2s that you're seeing. So, like, is this something that actually takes place on Secret? Like, am I going to get front run and back run and sandwiched and all the nasty things that like happen when you have a public meme pool?
I know when you say things like sandwich attack, people get the sense that this is actually like fun and delicious, but no, it's not. It's another example of where users are just getting hurt in this system. It wasn't by design, right? Nobody said, let's design a Web3 system. Let's design a blockchain with MEV because it's so good for users to be able to have miners be able to tell the future, essentially. No one else can see the future, but the miner essentially can. They're always living a step ahead. I started my career after undergrad as a derivatives market maker, and we had a lot of HFT, like high frequency trading strategies as a result. And it basically was the same thing. If you could live in the future, imagine how much money you could make. You would see every order, every piece of information before anyone else. And then the markets, the public markets, we sold it to people as saying like, this is a form of a public good, a public service. We're making things really liquid. This is how we make our bread and butter. And really what was happening was just you're scraping away pennies at everything. And nobody ever says at the end of that, well, thank goodness they were doing it because the users came out ahead. It was big business. People were paid a lot of money to solve those problems. People are getting paid a lot of money to extract value on every public by default blockchain. This is not just an ETH issue. This is all over Solana, where the big VC investors in that ecosystem are exactly the same people who are benefiting from MEV. It's an issue on Terra, it's an issue everywhere. And the more money that gets thrown around, the more incentive there is to be extractive in these systems. On Secret, it's just not possible because this mempool that we're talking about is encrypted. On Secret, it's a bit of like a technical, it's a little bit of jujitsu to say that it's an encrypted mempool, but fundamentally from the experience of a miner, it is, because by the time you have finished actually doing the transaction, computing the computation, whatever's come into the network, that's the only time you see the results of what you've done. You as the node didn't get to see in advance what was happening because in the process of decrypting it is when you're also executing it. You didn't get to decrypt it, see it, do your own thing with it, and then submit it to the mempool ahead of it. This is all happening simultaneously. There's no opportunity to front run. There's no opportunity to sandwich. So the net result is that it is the users who are coming out ahead, and the miners have to find another way to make some money out of their operation. But we're not supposed to say like miners are supposed to be in a well-designed system antagonistic to users. We should be saying the opposite. Miners and validators should be on the user's side, providing security as a service to the entire network. And that should ultimately benefit the end users who are now aligned with the validators, and everybody works together to sustain the ecosystem, as opposed to it constantly being this contentious battle between the people operating the network and the people trying to use it.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of is how the Flash Boys solved it, where eventually they spooled out that fiber wire, or that fiber cable like 30 miles long, and it added in 200 milliseconds of delay, which was enough time to essentially break all the HFT models. Like if you couldn't see the transactions happening within that 200 millisecond time, you just wouldn't be able to front run or do any sort of this like nasty HFT stuff that people were doing. So the same kind of model essentially applies to Secret here, where because you're using this hardware computation through the MPCs, like all that data goes encrypted into a black box where it's computed and executed, and by the time it comes out, when people can actually see the results of what's happening in that black box, it's too late. The transaction's already done, and nobody can front run it then.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar. I mean, we're not obviously literally spooling out any wire anywhere in this, and it goes beyond that, right? Like we didn't introduce privacy just to introduce latency. In fact, like what's happened here is like we didn't really make anything slower. We just made it a lot more secure. The challenge for us is, can we keep these privacy guarantees and security guarantees as the network continues to scale? Every blockchain is going to struggle on some level with scalability because all scalability, just like everything else, involves trade-offs.
Hmm.
So for us, it's just we have a fundamental thesis that the layer one itself needs to be private by default. And then you can also have a lot of these second layer solutions like rollups or side chains that contribute to scalability for the network and the applications on the network. But ultimately, we see Secret as the ideal issuance and settlement chain for fungible assets or non-fungible assets because of those privacy guarantees, because of the front running resistance, et cetera. Like people will trust Secret to keep their high value items, to keep their high value transactions, and for things like identity and reputation, which are high value in the sense that you need them to be protected. You want those privacy and consent guarantees. Secret will be the network for Web3 identity and reputation in a way that no other network is set up to be. And it comes back to our architecture. It comes back to that private by default model, the generalizability of the platform, and honestly, just having a massive first mover advantage by having built this out for the last 5 years as a fundamental technology, and then having it live on mainnet for the last 18 months. Like, we've learned so much as an ecosystem. I'm so excited for what's happening now because people use blockchains now. Imagine asking this question about MEV 2 years ago or 3 years
Yeah.
ago. No one would care because no one was using blockchains
Right.
for anything beyond just, speculation on centralized exchanges. Now we use them every day. So just imagine how it's going to feel re-asking this question in a year, right? My hope is that MEV isn't a hot topic because people are using Secret more than any other network, but it will still be an ongoing concern for the right reason, which is more usage, more users. And I'm glad people are starting to finally ask questions and identify problems that have to do with having too many people try to use a blockchain rather than not enough.
Well, speaking of people using your blockchain, let's grab to this last question, which is what are what are your like top three favorite projects being built on Secret Network right now? And then we'll hop over to wrapping things up with okay, not okay, which is going to be fun.
Oh man, I'm supposed to be so neutral at the application layer for the most part. Well, I'll say this. Let me say this. We've got a bunch of different verticals on the network.
Yeah.
Some are like other networks like DeFi, NFTs, gaming, metaverse. One is very specific to Secret, which is access control.
Yeah.
Like that is something that we fundamentally can do that other layer one networks cannot. They're just not built to do it. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming out in our ecosystem around management of DAOs, and management of like access control for files, projects like Jackal and projects like Secret DAO that are really tackling that. On the NFT side, we have Legend DAO, which is being built out by the Secret Labs team, serving all of these super cool creator use cases. Probably they'll have an announcement in the very near future, and I definitely didn't say when. And then Stash being the primary NFT marketplace. It's STASHH. So you get the Stash with the shush. That's the primary NFT marketplace, the only marketplace right now for secret NFTs. It's a joy to use. I use it every day. And then we've got on the DeFi side, so many. We have Secret Swap, which is also spinning into Hydro Finance. There's Sienna, which is launching privacy preserving lending in the very near future. There's Shade Protocol, which is doing synthetics and a private by default stablecoin called Silk. A lot of what I just mentioned, like I said, is already on mainnet. You can go use it right now. It would be lame to sit here and say, we got a bunch of cool stuff coming, but we're never going to show you. And it's all closed source or something like that. Like this is real stuff. If you're listening to this right now, you don't have to wait to use it. This isn't an announcement of an announcement. Like these are all apps you can go use for yourself. And if you go to SCRT.network, which is kind of the network homepage, there's a big list in the ecosystem section of all the different dApps and the stage that they're in, live or testnet or whatever. I would say start there because they're all my favorite. That's the honest answer. Every secret app is my favorite child that I'm not really a parent of.
So here, let me ask you. We have two more. One is a general question, and one is a little bit of a fun medley of okay things that are okay.
I'm
or not
really
okay.
excited for okay, not okay.
Yeah. Here we go. But let me ask you this one. We're gonna have our customers come in and buy Secret, right? So they buy it on Okcoin. How can they use it? How do they bridge it over to you? what's the number one way of them getting involved with the actual token other than just to hold it?
Yeah. So if you want to take it off the exchange and start using it, it's just like if you had Ethereum and you wanted to withdraw it to your MetaMask to start using Ethereum applications. I would recommend using Kepler, KEPLR. It's the biggest cross-chain wallet in the Cosmos ecosystem, where we are a Cosmos chain. So you can, by getting Kepler, you also get to use every other Cosmos network like Osmosis or like Atom or Juno. Like these are all Cosmos networks, and one wallet supports all of them, which is great. Once you have the secret in your wallet, you can do anything. You can stake it. I think right now there's around 25% APY annually for staking in the network passively. You can be an LP on something like Secret Swap or Sienna. You can buy an NFT off a stash. And the other thing I tell people to do if they just want to get deeper into the ecosystem is if you go to scrt.network/agents, you can become a secret agent, which is the core of our
Ooh,
community.
I
Oh,
like
I
that.
know. When I say it like that, it's really fun.
Ooh,
You get things like cool hats.
that's a cool idea.
Yeah, it's a community-driven program. It's managed by the community. They teach you everything you need to know about the network. It's educational. You get rewarded in NFTs and in swag and in secret. We bring the secret agents out to conferences. They run our booths. They wear trench coats and run around. Like we have a lot of fun. I think there's something like 20,000 secret agents right
Oh
now
wow.
that are signed up through that, and that's an amazing thing to do because even beyond just the token, this is a world-class community. We really think that we are the most community-centric and community-led project in Web3, or at least, in the top 10 would be more
All
fair
right.
to say.
Are you ready for the gauntlet?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, or not okay. You ready? Number
Yeah.
one, Bon Jovi songs at a karaoke bar. Okay?
Okay.
Not
Yeah,
okay.
I do them all the time. I do. It's my life.
Okay, okay, okay. Bitcoin maxis led by Max Kaiser. Okay or not okay?
Maximalism is not okay. No maximalism is okay with me. Even secret maximalism isn't okay with me, although it's more okay than some others.
Fair enough. The next one's gonna be variation of okay, not okay, and I gotta give two to Sam. But I need to know Doge or Shib.
Oh boy.
Oh, I was waiting for this one.
Do it. This is not a not okay or okay. This is just
They're
which
both
one
okay. Or
I
both not okay.
I I love altcoins. I love anything. Honestly, if I had to, I like Doge as an OG. Like if you're gonna pick a meme coin, go for the OG. If you're gonna pick a privacy chain, go for the OG. Right. So like I like OGs.
Sam, you got some? You got some okay, not okays, or should I just continue my onslaught of karaoke theme Bon Jovi Max Kaiserness?
No, we can get to like the most difficult and contentious one, I think, which is like pineapple on pizza, okay or not okay?
Not okay. Not okay. That's not contentious. I have a very strong publicly stated opinion on this. And as a proud Chicagoan, I have a lot of deeply held pizza related
Oh, where are you
opinions.
from in Chicago?
I'm in Wicker Park, and we're around some of the best pizza in the city between Peace and Pequods and places like that. We've got it all. People don't understand that Chicago pizza is much more than deep dish casserole. Like we have the best pizza, period, because we can feature any style. We've got Detroit pizza, New Haven pizza. We even have New York style pizza in Chicago that's better than the pizza you'll get in New York. So I have very strong. I'm glad you asked a pizza related opinion because I have those. I
That's
thought you thought it'd be contentious, maybe to your audience, but for us in the know, this is not a contentious issue. It's already been settled.
Well, I think
I love
it's probably a good place to wrap up. Man, this was fun, Tor. We definitely covered a lot. Um, I'm looking forward to just all the stuff that's built on Secret right now. You got Secret Swap and Sienna and like so many different projects that are coming out now, and it's so cool to see somebody finally tackling a lot of the bigger issues that you see on the public blockchains, like the MEV stuff, which we didn't get to spend enough time about. I would recommend everyone to go read. There's some great articles. One's called Ethereum is a Dark Forest, which kind of gets into some of this more technical and deeper stuff. But there's really some cool applications and great stuff that Secret is working on. So thank you for coming and introducing Secret Network to Okcoin today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for the great questions, guys, and best of luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot.